Hi everyone, my name's Katie Brown, Katarina, as you know in the system. I am going to be talking about cultural responsive teaching, supporting ELs in the classroom, and home and school connections that we can make to try to help those kiddos. I tend to talk a lot. I'll try to keep it to 5 to 7 minutes. If it's over, I apologize. So one of the first questions that we're going to talk about is what is cultural influence, or what are cultural influences on teaching and learning? And that is kind of a wide category, but we're going to kind of dim it down a little bit. But cultural influences on teaching and learning include students' language, communication styles, family roles, values, for instance, like a collectivism versus an individualism approach, very West versus East side of the world, prior educational experiences as well. And then these factors shape how students participate and process information, and then how they demonstrate that understanding. So when we look at how our students are showing what they know, it is can be a complete 360 from, I would rather wait to see what the rest of the class says versus I need to show first and I need to do myself first. It's two very different processes. It's two very different things. So it's something that we need to think about. Whereas the flip side, cultural competence and its role in the instruction of ELs, it's a teacher's ability to understand, respect, and effectively respond to students' cultural backgrounds. And what that means is, can we as teachers go with the flow? Can we take that minute and say, this is working well, this is not working well. I understand this about my students' culture, so maybe this will work better for them. That kind of thing. So this basically also means that we are recognizing that language learning is deeply identified to students' culture. And then the other thing that you got to know too is that, people that are learning English, there are words in the English language that there are not words for in other languages. English is hard. It's really hard. So we're going to keep that in mind too. And then how can EL's cultural values and beliefs be integrated appropriately in the context of teaching and learning? Okay, so some of these integration strategies, we got culturally relevant texts, names, and examples. We can incorporate students' traditions. For example, at my school, we do a Hmong Day every year where kids get to dress up as, in their Hmong garb that they usually wear. They get to perform and sing and show the school what it's like to be a Hmong person. Validate different communication styles. If a student doesn't speak English very well and they're communicating with you just in visuals to try to get their point across, let them. It's okay. And this is just for younger kids too as well. It's what I went to work with. And then connect new learning to students' background knowledge. Okay, so what do they know in the back of their mind, and how can you connect that? So there's that. And then another thing is, what is the role of culture in student learning? How do school and classroom environments influence language acquisition, and what steps are necessary to create an inclusive environment? So cultural impacts, we got motivation and engagement. Huge. The absolute number one most important thing. If a student is not motivated or engaged, they will not learn. Behavior expectations, also a big one. Again, if you think about it, for instance, my mother is a pediatrician. She works with a lot of Somali people in Minnesota here. And oftentimes she finds that Somali boys, when they get to that teenage age, they kind of start to disrespect their mother a little bit more, because in their culture, they are a lot of time, not always, obviously, but they are taught that, men are higher on the food chain than women are. And once you're a man, you are higher than mom. So it's different. And then communication patterns and willingness to take risks in language use. A lot of kids that don't 100% know what they're saying, they won't use the word, they won't say it. And then classroom and school environments influence language acquisitions through emotional safety. If they don't feel safe in their feelings, if they don't feel safe and confident in giving you that answer, they are not gonna answer. Opportunities for interaction. Give them those opportunities. And representation of diverse cultures. Again, and like I said in my field experience reflection, my school has I think 53 different countries in it represented by the student body. Crazy. And then steps to create an inclusive environment. We got diverse visuals, languages, and student work on my badge at school every day. I love all my students in English and in Hmong. Establish norms that represent all languages and cultures, and use structured peer interactions, turn and talk, cooperative learning, etc. And then provide consistent routines, especially important for students with autism. I teach students with autism. I have students that are EL and have autism. It is so important that we have routines. So important. And then, so we're going to kind of move on to supporting the needs of ELs in the classroom. So, we're not going to move on. Culturally responsive teaching. My apologies. So strategies for supporting and celebrating cultural diversity. Okay. So we got celebrate cultural events, not just through holidays, but daily integration matters. So we do that thing at my school with Hmong Day, but like every day in my classroom, we also pick a different language to say good morning in. Now, a lot of my students have autism. A lot of them can't do that. But my students that can, they love it and they love to participate. We also like to use multicultural literature and videos, inviting students or families to share about their traditions and their experiences. Incorporate music, art, and storytelling from different cultures. Many of the books in my room come from various different cultures. And then leveraging home language and cultural assets, we got to encourage the use of home language for comprehension. That's huge. I think a lot of people like to just be like, no, you speak English. Nope. What we need to do is we need to ensure that our students are grasping the content and not losing their language. We do not get to lose languages. I don't think that's okay, especially since that's how they communicate with their family. We have to use, bilingual labels, visuals, and then allowing, this is a big word, translanguaging. I have a student who I say, and her speech language pathologist says that as well, we say Hmonglish because she kind of speaks in Hmong sometimes she speaks in English, and sometimes she combines the two. Do we know what she is saying? No, but she is using her words, and that's important. And then pairing students together strategically for peer language support as well. All right, we're already at the 7-minute mark. I'm sorry. Now we're supporting the needs of ELs in the classroom. So differentiation, strengths, and social emotional support. Strategies that we are working on. Use visuals, gestures, modeling. Scaffolding instruction like sentence frames, graphic organization, etc. Providing multiple ways to respond. Verbal, painting, drawing, and it also could be in their own language as a response. And then breaking a task into smaller steps to make it a little easier to understand. For ELs with special needs, we're talking about collaborating with specialists, your speech language pathologists, your SPED teachers, etc. Using consistent routines and visual schedules. Again, routine. So important. Providing explicit language instruction that is also tied to those IEP goals, because in an IEP, you've got a communication section specifically if a student has speech goals, and that is where you need to connect that. And then social emotional supports, build the relationships. I know we talk about it all the time, but you need to build the relationship. Build it with the kid. If they don't have a relationship with you, they won't learn. I'm going to quote my favorite TED Talk. Kids don't learn from people they don't like. Straight up. That does not change. If they don't like you, they won't learn from you. And then using predictable routines. Again, talking about routines. Teach emotional vocabulary explicitly and providing safe opportunities for participation without pressure. They really don't want to have that pressure to be able to participate, but they're like, if it's kind of like casual, hey, let's try this, then it's okay. And then importance of social emotional understanding and the cultural needs of students when establishing classroom routines and procedures. Understanding the student's background knowledge helps teachers set appropriate expectations, avoid misinterpreting said behaviors, and build meaningful routines. You got to know that. For example, some cultures emphasize listening over speaking. Student may seem disengaged, but in reality, they might be respectful. They just vibing. And then trauma-informed teaching is a very important thing. Trauma and transition experiences, they might impact your behavior. What if they don't want to go to the next place? What if they lose their minds? It's probably trauma. So keep that in mind. And then when routines reflect the student's needs, they feel safe, ready to learn, transitions are smoother, and language acquisition increases because anxiety is reduced. It's all one fell swoop. All right. And then finally, we got home and school connections. How might family and community practices influence language learning? They build background knowledge. It makes learning meaningful and relevant, and it can strengthen identity and confidence. Get those kids to be involved. Every school should have a good community involvement, and that is huge. So, so, so important. If we're talking about their family jobs. Okay, so here's just an example. One of my students has a dad who's a mechanic, and he talks about his dad working on cars. It's really basic, it's really cool, but he is able to make that connection, and then his dad can come in and talk about that when we do a career day. We don't typically do that in my classroom, but like in a different classroom, that's also like an option that you can do. And then building strong family, school, and community partnerships. We've got strategies for family engagement. Communicate in home languages. If my student's family does not speak that language, if my student's family do not speak English, I do not talk to them in English. I talk to them in their home language. Now, I don't speak Hmong. I try, but I don't. So we have lots of interpreters at our school that I work closely with, and it's something that you got to be able to collaborate. That's huge. And so we are able to collaborate and then talk to them about that. And then using simple, clear language, avoid the jargon, especially with SPED. As a SPED teacher, especially with SPED, avoid jargon, keep it simple. And then offer flexible meeting times and provide visuals or videos for instruction. And then highlighting home language assets, we've got encourage families to read and speak in their own language. So you can give them a book, bring it home, have them read it to their kids, but in their home language. Send home bilingual materials and reinforce that maintaining a first language supports English development. So maintain that language, as I said. And then finally, inclusive classroom engagement projects. Community engagement practices. Host multicultural family events. We're also thinking about doing a day at the end of the school year where it's like Culture Day, like Festival of Nations. And basically all the different people and all the different things in our school are going to try to come together and do this. Let me see. Create opportunities for families to share expertise. You don't know. The family does. Let them have the spotlight. Let them tell you about it. And that will also encourage them to want to participate more. Build trust through consistent and respectful communication. That's a given. And then use two-way communication. Don't just send stuff home and expect them to answer it, because I can send stuff home and half the time my students' backpacks don't get opened. You need to call them. You need to text them. You need to do all the things. Communicate. Very important. Okay? So, of all of this, again, I thought I talked really fast, so I apologize. This is still almost a 13-minute long video. Culture and language are inseparable. Relationships and emotional safety, they are the foundations for EL success, and home language is an asset, not a barrier. Do not forget about it. And families are partners, not just participants. These are all very important. Thank you for coming and listening. I appreciate it. Have a great day.